Present.
Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Bell is also here. As the sound thug came up to tell me to turn on my mic. All right, we're going to start today with, I think I'll start with the advisory committee meetings. We've got the Marina Advisory Committee, December 10th at 6 p.m. here in the Harbor Center room. It's in person only. Again, that's December 10th, 6 p.m. here in the Harbor Center room. The airport, the BIAC is not meeting for the remainder of the year, is that correct? So there will be no Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee meeting for the remainder of the year. Now we'll move to public comment. Anybody wishing to speak before the commission on any topic whatsoever, feel free to come up. We reserve about 3 minutes per speaker. And we do ask anybody in the audience that has an adversarial opinion to keep it to yourself when someone's speaking. We like to let everybody say what they want to say. Is there anybody signed up? Nobody signed up. Anybody online wishing to speak to the commission?
Nope.
Anybody in the audience? No? Okay. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Commission moves that we approve consent agenda items A through F and consent agenda items H and I. Anything you would like to say about that, Commissioner Shepard?
Are we going to talk about D separately?
I'd like to pull D from the consent agenda for a later date and have some further internal discussion.
Okay. Yeah,
That's the write-off for the Blaine Boathouse. Okay.
maybe we could just hear a little bit of information on it, rationale for it being on the agenda, and then we can discuss if we're going to pull it either for the an action item or for a later meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is your preference later meeting?
I'd prefer we just pull it for a later meeting.
Okay, so you want me to talk about it at a later meeting?
No, why don't you just give us a briefing on it?
Okay, I was furiously scribbling, preparing for that one. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tiffany DeSimone, Director of Maritime. And so our legal counsel has recommended we write off 3 of the remaining customers up in the Blaine Boathouses, and then 3 would go to stay in our collections, and we would try to collect from them. The associated memo, which is in your packet, has the explanation for each of them. If you want, I can do a really brief synopsis now, or I can speak with you all at another meeting about the reasoning for those 3. Do you have a preference? One, the associated customer with Morgan Dotson, that one we were going to seek reimbursement. Lee Michaels was a person who did make contact through his attorney with our legal team, made payment arrangements, made that payment to us, and the commission has already approved that. The remaining that is a write-off. Another customer, number 3, Robert Frayne, is deceased, and we're recommending write-off for that one. Customer Norm Ariat, there is no vessel in that particular slip. We have had difficulty contacting him, and so the cost associated with serving him in Canada, we think would be fairly substantial. And then the last one, Glenn Harris, sorry. That one does have a boat, and we propose to seek reimbursement from DNR. It's kind of a rundown. There's one more. Apologies.
Is there anything time sensitive in us pushing this to a later meeting?
No, and as you know, we've been working on this for a good part of 18 months probably, and did anticipate having some cost, and so accounted for that in our 2024 budget. And so we're just kind of wrapping up the business toward the end of the year, but we can sure talk about it in the later meeting.
All right.
And provide you more information.
I'm fine with moving it to our next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on the consent?
No, I didn't have anything else. Well, I did have one question on the Bourne On the Bornstein, where was it here? The amount there is that on the fiscal impact, the nominal rent, is that for 5 years or is that for 1 year?
I'm opening it now, but if someone from real estate has the answer to that, please.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to come back to you with the answer for that. Yeah, Elliot Smith, the real estate director, and the staff member handling that is not available at this moment, so.
But it's a 5-year adjustment, so it's,
I correct myself, Judy Harvey.
come on up to the microphone if you would, or the podium, please.
On the fiscal impact, Judy, on the nominal rent, is that 5 years, that figure 5 years, or is that a single year?
That's 5 years total.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And is that all for you?
That's all I have, yeah.
I just had a question for Brian on the Squalicum Creek restoration project. Who's the lead on that for conducting the work and for all the grants and everything?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning. Yeah, for that project, it's actually the City of Bellingham is the lead on that. That's a project that's been back and forth a number of times on who was the lead, whether the port or the city. We actually got a grant from the Department of Ecology originally to the port to kind of take this. Take some initial design. In parallel to that, the city actually was pursuing a much larger grant, I think like $6 million grant, got that, and then we are now kind of handing that over to them to lead. And our internal team, Kurt Baumgarten's the lead on that. He's out sick this week. Yeah, mostly the city lead, but a lot of close coordination with the port staff and our tenants and all the folks down and around there. So this is very early feasibility study kind of level work, but it's large scale in the fact that it impacts 3 bridges, potential creek relocation, all that for stormwater habitat and a number of different elements. So this is just starting that kind of analysis, but the city will be the lead.
It's probably one of the more complex ones out there with the rail crossing, the private land, the
That's right.
port land, the city land. the
Truck
creek,
route, the
truck
flooding,
route.
yeah, all of the above. And
Yeah.
Sam, and the sewer pump station that is being rebuilt right now will lower the sewer line that is currently kind of close to the surface. Is why you have a concrete bottom on part of the creek. So we got to get this phase first work done first. So it's all really complicated. But the good news is that getting this large grant to the city really sets that up for some early design. I think primes that for future larger scale capital type of grants too.
So is the money the city has is mostly planning feasibility money?
Yeah,
at
early,
this point?
feasibility study, early design, and kind of options analysis, all of those pieces.
So if the grant is $6 million for planning, this is a expensive project.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know how many zeros we have to add after that, but it's going to be a pricey one.
Yeah, and it's going to take a bit of time, but it's great that we're getting rolling on it because it's much needed. You've seen multiple flooding events down there over the course of the years, and it's like this is something that our tenants are looking forward to, and it's a good project.
Yeah. Does this qualify as a culvert?
Yeah,
For
they're actually. I
culvert
mean, that's the thing.
replacement money?
Yeah, that it is, and so that's some of the terminology in there is specifically because we are referring to those as box culverts rather than bridges because that's where a lot of the funding is focused now is on culvert upgrades. So they really are kind of individual multi-cell culverts that function as a bridge, but it's not technically as far as the engineering terms go, a bridge. So we're actually using that terminology to pursue the funding side of things too.
Smart.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You say that they're going to possibly move the creek?
That'll be one of the things that'll be looked at. There could be, and it has been moved multiple times.
By itself?
Well, by itself and by humans. It used to come out kind of right here, and then it was moved back, and so there's a lot of different locations that it's been. But there could be an advantage to relocating kind of the mouth of the creek to have less structures that have to go over it, and that would then maybe consolidate some of the land that is the cold storage uses right now on the other side of our bridge could come over to this side and have the mouth of the creek come out into that estuary, which we did a large project on a number of years ago. So there could be some habitat elements to it, could be a more functional operational side of things, but it's just one of the options that'll be looked at. There's still a lot of work to do to see if that's even feasible.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Matt.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Anything else?
No, I haven't.
All right, I have none. All right, consent agenda, motion to approve items A through C, E through F, and H and I. Commissioner Shepard,
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes. All right, we're now going to recess our public meeting and open our public hearing on the 2025 preliminary strategic budget. Public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to address the commission on our 2025 strategic budget, please do so now. Wow. Anybody online?
After having a packed house last meeting, I guess everybody got their comments out of their way.
Well, I know what's going on at the county council right now. There's a huge budget meeting, so. No one else? Okay. We will now close the public hearing on the 2025 preliminary strategic budget and reconvene our regular commission meeting. Tamara.
Thanks, Commissioners. Tamara Sobczak, CFO. So the action, oh, did you want to read the motion ahead of time? Or not?
I'm sorry, I didn't. I was reading, I didn't hear the question.
There's the action item.
Right.
Port Commission approval of Resolution 1416, approving the 2025 strategic budget, and Resolution number 1417, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the maximum levy capacity. So moved.
Okay, so the two resolutions in front of you today are required by the county to file our budget. 1416, like you said, approves the draft budget that was published on our website, in addition to the changes that we discussed at our last meeting. And those, in summary, are 0% property tax increase, a small budget for some software, and then a list of changes to current projects. And then Resolution 1417 sets the property tax levy and then reserves the bank capacity for the future if the commission so desires to use it. So with that, we're recommending approval.
Commissioner Briscoe?
In reality, with the growth that's going on in the county, our levy increased, the number we're getting increases, correct? Am I incorrect?
No, it's a lump sum. We asked for a certain dollar amount, and that's the lump sum we asked for. The amount an individual house will pay will decrease because that lump sum is divided by more houses as we grow.
Okay, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
I was trying to explain that actually the people who have been here, their taxes are decreasing by the number of people moving in.
Right.
We're going backwards instead of forwards.
Yep, that's
We're
correct.
staying the same, but the folks' taxes are going less instead of increasing. Okay, that's what I was trying to get out there. Thank you, that's sometime.
So it's a product of both more houses in the system and then also the houses being valued at a higher rate too. Correct. Yeah. A couple different,
Catch-22.
yeah, a couple different pushes and pulls on it. Okay.
Are we the only levy that does it that way? Lump sum and,
No, everyone does their levy that way. They just talk about it differently, and I don't think there's a great understanding of how you levy property taxes.
and when you say we bank this, how much do we have banked currently?
I think there's about $3.5 million banked. And that's because we haven't taken, that's when there's a date in the past, and I don't know what that date is, but all of the years that we did not take our 1% increase, we get to bank that. So you don't lose it if you don't take it.
Yeah, you don't lose it, and we take it
Right.
for when there's an emergency,
If we choose to, yes.
if we choose to.
But you can't take more than 1% in a year, is that correct? You can take your whole banked capacity?
I know you can take the banked capacity. I don't know how much of it, but that would be a pretty large increase to the taxpayers.
That would probably be quite a large
That's the
increase.
discussion at the county council at the moment,
Yeah.
is they're taking their banked because they're in such a deficit that, that's why everybody's over there and not here.
Okay. How much of their banked are they going for?
12 million.
You have a way with words, Ken.
I work hard at it. It's actually just a loose neuron. You just never know where it's going to connect.
You never know where it's gonna hook. It's like that electrical wire you see in the water in the
It may
street
actually
zapping around.
hit
Okay,
another neuron along the way.
I got it now.
All right, this is not an easy decision, but go ahead. Anything else?
I don't have any other questions here.
Anything else? Okay, so the Port Commission approval of Resolution 1416, approving 2025 strategic budget, and Resolution 1417, authorizing the regular property tax levy and declaring a substantial need to maintain the minimum levy capacity. Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Also, yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 2. Action item, employee international travel, a motion to approve that resolution. And I think Tamara, you're up for this one as well. And the action requested is a motion to approve 2 employees' international travel for 2025. Trying to figure out how to get a commissioner involved in that trip as well, but have been
We
unsuccessful.
can write that in.
No, you don't want to, you don't want the heat.
Thanks, Commissioners. So this item in front of you, like you mentioned, is to approve 2 employee international travel trips. And per the Resolution 1106, commissioners have to, or the commission has to approve all international travel. So the first one is our broker, Alliant, our insurance broker, is traveling in January to the Lloyd's of London offices, and they're requesting that several ports send a representative to those offices. Lloyd's is a market that's really based in relationships, and they value face-to-face contact. And representatives of Lloyd's has been here to our facilities and toured, and Marlena toured them. And so we'd like to send Marlena over there to that meeting, just to keep that relationship up. And it's important because, you know, when we're up for renewal or if we have a claim, now they know who we are and they know that we have our act together. So that's the first trip. The second trip is in February, there's the International Aviation Conference, Routes Americas 2025. And that's in the Bahamas, and we'd like to send Aaron Collins. And that's, again, a good networking opportunity for him to develop those relationships with senior industry leaders. And also, it's a conference, so there's some training opportunities as well. So those are the 2 we'd like approval for tonight.
How long have we been
Commissioner
working with
Shepherd?
Lloyd's?
They just came into the market, port market in 2023, and they have our property market. They don't have our liability, so we'd like to see if they would be interested in some point looking at our liability insurance as well. They gave us a very favorable rate.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions, I think.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
I have none either. Thank you for bringing this forward. And the motion is to approve 2 employee international travel for 2025. Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes.
Thank you.
Let's hope Aaron comes back with a trophy.
Pictures anyways. We at least get pictures, right?
So, yes. A motion to approve the sale of 6.18 acres of Sumas International Cargo Terminal to Arrow Road, Washington.
It's reload, I believe.
Oh, I don't have my glasses. A motion by the Port Commission to approve a purchase and sale agreement for 6.1 acres in Sumas International Cargo Terminal to Arrow Reload, Washington, Inc., and authorized executive director to execute any necessary documents to complete the transaction and to terminate the lease upon closing. And I believe this is Elliot. Oh, no, it's Terry.
Terry.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Terry Elahi, Property Manager. The transaction that you have in front of you is the sale of 6.18 acres, and it's the last developed property that we own in Sumas. In the late 80s, early 90s, the port purchased 52 acres of property in Sumas with the goal of spurring private investment and increasing jobs. What we did was we put in infrastructure, utilities to the sites, and then built a heavy haul road to the Canadian border. That has worked so well that over the past years, we've sold 43 of the acres to our tenants, and this is the last property that is currently under lease. This property has been under lease for the last 34 years to different reload companies. They have 2 rail spurs in there, and different reload companies, but markets have changed over time. The current Arrow Reload USA actually acquired the assets of the company and then had the lease transferred last year in 2023. And now are willing to purchase the property at the full market value, which is the appraised value of $1.59 million. So staff certainly recommends sale.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, the previous acreage we sold there led us to buying the old Ershig properties up here, which put a lot of people to work, and a lot of businesses in there. So this whole getting things going in Sumas that the port did in years past and has worked out quite well. We got a lot of businesses up there and people working. So I think that this would kind of cap everything off, and maybe we could put that money to work somewhere to put some more people to work. So,
Great.
thank you, Terry.
Mr. Shepherd?
Do we have a specific plan for these funds, or are they just augmenting our overall budget?
They're just augmenting our budget.
Yeah, okay. Well, it seems like the property has done what it's supposed to. I think we've, following their same pattern that we've employed up there with the other Sumas properties, and I'm glad it's, this tenant has a good plan for it and is looking to put it in to greater use.
Yes, agreed.
Just to clarify on that, while the approximate $6 million will go into the general fund, we will be putting far more than that in the Ershig's property over the next couple of years, so you could easily make that connection.
And I'm going to speak in favor of this. Just I, as a commissioner, believe that our job is to get from 0 to 60, and once we've gotten the car on the road and we're at cruise control speed, that it's time to let go of the car. So if we can get a property like this from 0 to 60 and get it operational, and then get it out of our hands to go start something else and take it from 0 to 60, I love that as a concept. So I'm absolutely in favor of this, so thank you. All right, the motion was a motion by the commission to approve the Airport Industrial Park lease between the Port of Bellingham, oops, pulled up the wrong document. See what you get by going ahead?
Right here.
Oh, I got it.
Right here. Just want to read it.
Motion by the Port Commission to approve the purchase and sale agreement of 6.1 acres in Sumas Industrial Cargo Terminal to Aero Reload Washington, Inc., and authorize the executive director to execute any necessary documents to complete the transaction and terminate the lease upon closing. Commissioner Shepherd?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes.
Thank you.
Now the one I was reading is our formally consent agenda item G, which was moved to an action item because it needed further discussion. And it is a motion by the commission to approve the Airport Industrial Park lease between the Port of Bellingham and Pickleball Acre LLC, whereby Pickleball Acre LLC will lease the property at the Airport Industrial Park to develop and construct a large industrial grade warehouse.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Annika Bjorkman, Senior Property Manager in the Real Estate Department, and today I'm here to present a development lease out at the Airport Industrial Park, development site number 18. I'd like to go through a few of the lease terms and then invite Marcel Zuzarte up to introduce himself and ask any questions that the commission might have or answer the questions. So the premises is 2.56 acres of land. The use is the development of approximately 40,000 square foot industrial warehouse. Rent will be $6,688 a month. That rent will be subject to annual CPI escalations and a rent adjustment every 5 years. Rent will commence either on the issuance of an occupancy permit or 2 years after the lease commencement, whichever occurs earlier. And the lease term will be 40 years with one 10-year renewal. Any questions for me?
Commissioner Shepard?
So I always like us putting properties to work. This one in particular is being with the airport and not being an aeronautical use. Just makes me pause and provide some opportunity for question. Can we have some more rationale on why this fits into our airport area, not being an aeronautical use, if it's adequately compatible with FAA requirements, and have we been marketing this to others and we haven't seen any appetite?
Yeah, we've been marketing the airport properties for some time now. There's a lot of marketable property out there, some which are attached to the runway via taxiways and some which are not. This is one of those that's not attached to the runway via a taxiway, so there's no way to get a helicopter or an airplane from this property to the airfield. There's a steep bank in the way along with many trees. So it's not going to really lend itself to an aeronautical use. It would not be in conflict with any FAA rules to put this facility there. And our thinking on this was more industrial warehouse, getting that built there and in place. The use being pickleball obviously isn't aeronautical, but as I said earlier, we have a lot of non-aeronautical uses at the airport. The key, in our opinion, was to get an industrial warehouse on the facility that could be used for multiple purposes. Pickleball just happens to be the one that's being proposed.
And I will say the FAA has already approved this use.
Okay.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, I guess the construction is concerns me. What are we building? I mean, when we talk about an industrial warehouse, to what level is it an industrial warehouse? Can we run overhead cranes in it if need be? I mean, what's the structure going to be like? We could build a great big building, and you got to do a lot of stuff to it to use it for industrial business. I mean,
Yeah, based on what I know about the designs, it's going to be a building very similar to the pavilion, so probably not overhead cranes. It will be insulated and have bathrooms, well, yeah, it'll be insulated with heat, so I think that'll be a code requirement to get an occupancy permit. But I'd picture a building very much like the pavilion, only bigger, and a prefabricated building that's built off-site and then assembled on-site. We can probably get Marcel up here. I see him in the back of the room, so
why don't I
he might be
introduce
best to
Marcel?
talk about his development.
This is Marcel Zuzarte, the owner of Pickleball Acre.
Hi, guys.
I'm curious about the capital expenditure. Just as a commission, I'm a little concerned that we're doing a 40-year lease, and typically for our port tenants, we have a high standard for investment into property. So what's your capital expense into this, and how sturdy will the building be for uses beyond pickleball, say 20 years from now?
Absolutely. So the building is a solid steel structure as far as frame, and I don't know the indefinite length of life of a steel structure building, but I'd imagine 100 years plus. The fact that it'll be insulated and totally encapsulated or enclosed will also give it longevity as far as the lease is concerned. The possibility of this building to be used for any other commercial activity is very high. It'll have 2 roll-up doors that'll be accessible by semi-truck if need be. Other than that, the interior of the building will be commercial grade flooring, concrete, and like I said, steel structure throughout. We are building a mezzanine section, which will include the bathrooms, a small cafe slash bar cafe, and a pro shop and a gym, with a mezzanine area to include upstairs of extended seating or viewing areas as well.
What's the capital cost?
Current capital cost for this building is approximately $2.5 million.
For 40,000 square feet?
40,000 square feet, yeah. My philosophy with most of the business I'm involved in is purchase wholesale, not purchase retail. So on contacting a lot of builders here in the Bellingham area, straight up $100 a square foot, which brought this building to about $4 million would be the actual value, is what I'd say. But purchasing wholesale to me is key in trying to keep costs down and make this project affordable. And so I've gone direct to a lot of to the manufacturer of the building itself, first of all, and then dealing with the general contractor. I am basically working directly with subs to eliminate all that extra overhead that typically goes with a contract of anywhere from 10 to 30% of markup. So just being a smart consumer and being able to purchase wholesale, being able to keep this project down to about roughly 66% of the actual cost of what it'd normally take if you just went to a builder and asked him for a turnkey project. You know, you'd be looking at about $4 million. So I feel that's a great equity injection by being able to purchase something wholesale and build it at an affordable cost to make this project viable.
And what kind of model are you going to envision for, is it a membership model, or is it a open kind of court model? Do you expect to have tournaments of any sort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, all of the above. So I've worked in this particular field for a couple of decades as far as racket sports. Obviously, pickleball is a newer field for me. I've been playing professionally the last year and a half. Been playing the sport for 3 years, but played tennis all my life, and I've been active in the tennis community. So as far as the model is concerned, I've seen many businesses like this one, especially here in Bellingham, come and go. Not too many, but a couple. And I travel across the country. Just came back from Phoenix yesterday, and look and talk to many businesses around this type of industry. So combination of having a membership, which is crucial for consistent revenue, especially in our good months, which would be summer months where people don't want to come and play indoors. So having an annual membership on that, having a drop-in option for people to come and play and pay as you go. Absolutely, tournaments. This is actually a very exciting model because nowhere in the state of Washington, Oregon, or even British Columbia, Canada, is there a facility of this size currently. The largest facility currently offers about 10 to 12 courts. This product will have 17 courts inside, and I aim to have an additional eight courts on the outside eventually. So what this is going to do is to bring quite a bit of revenue to Bellingham, Whatcom County in the form of tournaments, both national level tournaments and local tournaments. On our national tournaments, we see anywhere from 800 to 2,500 players outside of spectators attend events like this. And that means flying into the Port of Bellingham, residing in all the hotels we have within a 1 mile radius. There's about 5 hotels easily within that 1 mile radius. Of course, all the other benefits of tourism, restaurants, car rentals, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I've talked to actually all the major players involved in this sport who offer these tournaments nationwide, and they are very excited to finally have something in the state of Washington. So I think Bellingham is absolutely going to benefit from being on the map in this up and coming, fastest growing sport in the U.S.
Well, I'm glad you spoke on that. That's the part that kind of intrigued me the most about this as an activator for some of our hotels and other, hospitality industries when we get people to come to these big sporting events. It's a big deal for local communities if they can host these type of events. I don't think any of our other facilities are of this size, and so this would be unique.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've lost over the couple of years, 2, 3, I'd say 5 years, we've lost several tournaments that are national based, mostly to the Seattle area, and then eventually disappeared altogether because there is no facilities to be able to host large scale tournaments. So they've gone to other states and other cities. So with this opportunity to have enough courts to host these kind of level of tournaments, we'll be able to bring that back not only to the state of Washington but also to the city of Bellingham for the first time.
Are you done? For now?
For now.
Commissioner Briscoe?
For now.
I'm concerned with the term, quite frankly, 40 years for an investment of $62.50 a foot, which is what that works out to be. For a 40-year investment, I would expect more than a $2.5 million investment in a building, especially in an airport industrial park. This isn't personal.
Sure.
It's also a belief that quite frankly, I'm not sure how long pickleball is going to be a fad. I consider it a fad today. But that's because I'm an old gray-haired man that didn't grow up with it.
There's that neuron again.
And I would have expected a more substantial structure. We certainly required more investment from, say, a Bellingham Cold Storage when we extended their lease, and I know we would expect more from other tenants for a 40-year lease. So the term of the lease bothers me. The lack of investment also bothers me. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, I think the lack of investment is a little bit harsh because he's trying to do a good job of building something and without overspending. And I mean, I get that. I understand that. But I also have an issue with that long a lease for the investment. The return, but then you have to look at the return of it for the surrounding areas. That's part of it too. So, but.
And if you're successful, you change the nature of the industrial park, because all of a sudden you become a draw for those kind of activities and not airport industrial type work. If you're successful, you will be, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Especially at that rate, just saying. I just think that the idea that that's what that area would become flies in the face of maybe what an airport industrial park should have. But that's, again, talking it through. Some of this is thinking out loud, so don't.
Yeah,
Sure.
To what you said, as we grow at an airport out there, more people come through, and if people have a day before they can fly out, or it adds to something for folks to do that are traveling through our airport as well. There's the positive side of that. Is, oh yeah, we can fly in a day or two early and stay a couple of days, because we got, maybe like to do pickleball, I don't know. But, I think that adds to the choice of our travelers.
Yeah, and it's not inconsistent. I mean, we've got the LASIK center out there where the doctors fly in, do their surgeries, and then fly back out, and it's vacant a lot of the time, so it's not inconsistent. But it doesn't take away from the 40-year term for me.
There's certainly a variety of businesses out there. It's clearly not all aeronautical. I think we feel some need to hold property for those high employment opportunities with high wage employment that comes with aeronautical industry. And the airport it's a finite resource. We only have one, and we're not going to be building anymore. And so taking parcels out of play for aeronautical use, I just provides some, a little bit of consternation for me to think through, could there be a higher and better use for the property in terms of job creation and employment capacity? I don't know how many employees would be at a facility like the one that you're considering. You know, we've talked a bit about the ripple effect for positive tourism with tournament and other. Do you have any employment numbers? I don't think these are heavy demands on people's time for employment.
Correct. It's not a very labor-intensive situation. My employee count would be between 6 to 10 employees. I do want to bring up a point of one of the primary reasons of my need or want to develop a project like this. I grew up in Africa, and contrary to growing up here, my kids grew up here. I've been involved in sports all my life, and so are my kids. And growing up in Africa kind of gives you a different perspective, where sports is great, it's a great option. It's not necessarily available to all in the sense of the rate it is here, except here one has to have deep pockets if you want to get into high-level sports. Your parents have to put you in special programs, club teams, send you to camps, and do all these other things. So as an athlete, I've always kind of been kind of upset by that structure where it takes a lot for someone to succeed to a high level in sports, other than their physical capability. It takes a support system. It takes parents being able to sacrifice big dollars for these kids to develop into these amazing athletes. And yes, sure, they'll get sponsored and get programs, they'll get in. But the point is, having an indoor recreational facility, and this was one of the major draws for me to actually get involved or actually think of this concept, is to make this project affordable and available to the youth. Okay, first of all, in the winters, which our winters extend from basically spring, well, I should say fall through spring, because that's our wet season. The dry summer months, great to be outside playing and doing whatever you can actively. But the rest of the year, those 9 months, my goal for this project is to actually provide free access to youth up to the age of 18. And that includes the schools. I've talked to the school boards, and a few of them are very, very excited about this possibility of bringing this sport into their schools, which it already has at a PE level. But they're talking into scholastic type situations. So I've talked to the school boards. My goal is to provide free play for youth throughout the day, whether it's classes coming in there for the school program or just youth coming in there after school. Rather than go to hang out at the skate park and get up to who knows what, we'll have an indoor facility that'll be monitored. It'll be dry, it'll be climate controlled, and we'll have a program that will allow youth who are interested in developing the sport into, call it a profession or a career, to a higher level, to provide such training. Now that might definitely cost, because I'll have to pay trainers to do this, but my whole vision of this product is to allow everyone access at affordable rates. And this is why I strived and worked really hard on the budget on this product to try and get it in and get it affordable. So yes, it doesn't seem like a big, expensive product, but like I said, in the reality of the retail cost of this product, it would probably be in the range of $4 to $6 million. Take it for what it's worth, trying to save and be efficient and make a product affordable to the general public and give them additional options for indoor recreation, I think is key for Whatcom County or this climatic area, to allow general public access to a product like this and to allow youth to have such a facility available to them up to the age of 18 at no cost.
I certainly appreciate that, and I like it. And as parent of 2 kids in sports, I know the endless parent trips back and forth to those, and just the effort it takes and requires. And anytime we can make recreation easy and affordable, I think we're doing a good job. I feel like I need a little bit more from staff on just trying to understand what I feel like our previous airport director was starting us in, was trying to understand the ratio of available property that we have in our portfolio as we project into the future. It's just hard for me to be able to visualize the amount of available property that we have in the airport, both inside the fence and outside the fence. Understand how much this property would be a part of that ratio, and then try and then project out, do we have enough future property to still entice some other large value employers who want to make use of that unique opportunity around the airport property? Does that make sense?
So Commissioners, you have a photo in front of you that I think helps explain that quite well. Williamson Way runs parallel to the taxiways and the runways. And towards the top of that picture, you see a nice white concrete, brand new taxiway going out to a white rectangular building. That's where Bellingham Aviation Services just built the new hangars. Those are the only new hangars constructed at the airport in the 16 years since I've been here. That taxiway was $20+ million to build. As you go down Williamson Way, all those properties are developable. They're a high bank, so you'd be doing a lot of earthwork, but those would be the next logical places to develop a hangar and provide taxiway access. Where you see the red star is where we're talking about putting this building. As you go up a little bit to the right of that, you'll see two buildings that are Sound, the Homeland Security, and then Sound Beverage, a beverage distributor. And then across Airport Way from that, you see two buildings that are connected, and that's Woodstone, where they build pizza ovens. Those will never have taxiway access. They're just logistically, you can't get there from there. Too many trees, roads in between that would have to be vacated, or high banks that would have to be moved. So the developable property you have is in between, for aeronautical uses, is in between Williamson Way and the taxiway. And you can see there's a substantial amount of that property available.
I guess what maybe would help for some other context is we do see property, what percentage of that is wet, what percentage of that is actually things that we could see developed or not.
And I'm going to go to your point. All the other property is harder to develop. This is a pad ready. I mean, and we strive for having land that is pad ready, right, for when that eventuality comes. This is the one site that is. All the rest of it, for us to get ready in this condition, you may have another one further north from there.
There's a little bit, there's a smaller one just to the north. It's going to be coming to you as well, I think, pretty soon, if it hasn't already.
Is that a go-kart operation? No. Just checking.
Yeah, Elliot Smith, Real Estate Director for the Port of Bellingham. I just want to, as a little bit of context, not specifically about Pickleball Acre, since I came on as your real estate director about 4 years ago, we've been working quite hard to develop this area as the airport industrial park outside of the fence of the aeronautical uses, so quite cognizant of what needs to actually be in that sort of first ring of airport business and what then could profit from it being a little bit farther out. Now, for roughly the last 20-odd years, this parcel has been quite difficult to develop. While around it, if you drive up Bakerview Road, the community is blossoming. Almost every site that can be built on is built on or otherwise occupied. This area, because it is publicly held and because it does have some wetland issues for some of the areas, we've struggled to really properly develop it. Coming to you in the very near future will be a second parcel at Lot C, which has been used for driver training predominantly for the last few years. That will be other industries that could be aeronautical, but could be general manufacturing. In the old Army Air National Guard facility, we have a marvelous manufacturer building carbon fiber auto parts and experimenting with some electric car conversions. We have another company that uses computer modeling to 3D modeling to produce auto parts that he ships all over the world. A few telecommunication companies, as well as the Emergency Operations Center. So there are 3 or 4 parcels we'd like to see develop and start to pay income into supporting the Port of Bellingham as a whole, including the airport. That's important so that we don't burden the taxpayers with additional rates, but we start to earn it on the land that we've been developing. So I see this, this development as consistent. In the very unlikely case that Mr. Zuzarte's business does not succeed, this is usable as another industrial facility. We still control the land underneath it. We control the ability for that built property to be passed on to anyone else in the future. So I believe this is in the port's best interest, especially given the flexibility in the future. I just wanted to put a little context around the airport industrial park. It's a confusing topic, but a big opportunity for us to actually slice by slice start to grow our income for real and feed that into the budget that we've discussed so frequently recently. Thank you.
Commissioner Bell mentioned that there's another parcel, and you just mentioned, Elliot just mentioned Lot C. If you go to the red star, right above that, there's a couple buildings, then you'll see a big empty lot. That's the lot we call Lot C. If you go just to the right of that, you'll see a grass area. That is also a developable lot. So those are the easy picking lots that are pretty much ready for binding site plans.
So, just so everybody knows where I'm at with this, I think it's a great venture. I don't have a problem with what he wants to do there at all. I still have a little heartburn with 40 years. I mean,
It's actually 50.
well, right, but the initial is
It's got a
40.
10-year renewal.
Right. That's what you want to do, and you're saving money on the building the way you want to do it. I think that's great. I don't have any trouble with anything you want to do there. I don't have any trouble with this going there. I do have a little trouble with 40 years up front. So, you know, we can sit here and hash this out all night, or we can move this to we can have some more internal discussion and move this to the 17th, which we would have to vote no on it tonight unless I'm incorrect, and then we can re-put the item on the 17th. Would that be correct?
That would be correct. Can't we table it until the next meeting?
You could pull it because you haven't had a vote on it, just like you did with the earlier item that Tiffany presented.
Okay, so we could just pull it and not have a vote on it tonight and have this internal discussion and discussions with the gentleman about it?
Yeah. That would be my,
Rather
that'd be my
than
preference.
just sit here tonight and discuss it, try and, you know, but just so you know, I don't have a problem with your business. I just have a problem with the length of time, and I need to know why we need that length of time. And I don't think we need to discuss that tonight.
Move that we pull Pickleball Acre LLC item from the agenda, reinstate it after an executive session on the matter, preceding the next commission meeting. And that'll give us some time. And I'm going to weigh in as well, just so you know, just where we're coming from. If somebody said, hey, Ken, here's $2.5 million, here's a 40-year, 50-year lease on 2.5 acres, and I was going to build this building, I could make money all day long. Just because I think it's cheap and I think it's a long-term lease. I think it's incredible value, and I just wonder if the port's getting what we deserve out of this. And I have
Well, it's
a
not so
real.
much it's not what the port deserves, it's what the people of Whatcom County that own the property. And that's what we're here, we're voted to do, is make sure that the public's asset, which you're part of the public, their assets are not taken advantage of in a business matter. And that's kind of what we're looking at 40 years going, well, as Ken said. So it's the people's assets we're looking after. Go ahead.
And the other side of this is it does set a precedent. The 40-year plus 10 is really a 50-year lease. And I'm not in favor of 50-year leases. And I'll give you the reason for that, is because we bind other port commissions beyond ourselves, and we won't be alive. And so we've been dealing with leases that other port commissions have imposed upon us that sounded really good 40 years ago, but 40 years later, they don't look so attractive. And we've had to do some cleanup of some of those. And so the biggest concern is that if we're going to do something, we want to make sure that what we do, if it's going to be surviving 40 years, is the right move for a 40-year move. We've got to try to have that kind of vision as we go forward with this. And I'm just not sure that this is that. That's just me. So I'd like to table it. And I just want to know, and you're more than happy to take me to coffee and let's go have this discussion.
Sure.
But the other part of it is I'm just not sure about the viability of pickleball long-term. And so it needs to have something else. I mean, we've seen one pickleball facility here go to a go-kart facility.
But the viability really doesn't matter.
It's in the building.
Yeah,
Correct.
because
And
if the
if that's the
pickleball goes
case-
away, something else is going to come.
And if that's the case, I want to make sure that we've got the right building for that lot for 40 to 50 years worth of lifespan. That's really my concern.
Yeah, if I might just address that, I was actually, one of the primary reasons for building a very boring shaped building compared to some of the fancy, type products that are out there across the country that have, nice high-end restaurant and, few indoor courts and a big play area on the outside for the kids, was because the viability of a building like this can be turned at given notice into anything else. It's a fully open span building that can be used for warehousing, that can be used for manufacturing, and building it for that reason to be very purposefully, repurposed if need be.
Would you share the specs of that building?
Sure.
This is what we have. I don't have a spec on it. Just
Yeah, it's
sometime
pretty,
in the next week.
Oh, sure.
Just get that to us.
Mm-hmm.
That'll help us.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to table this until the next.
Okay. And as far as the term is concerned, I hope I'm still alive in 40 years and put me right at 95. But it's not a big deal. My goal is to make this a product that's going to be available and purposeful for everybody in Whatcom County, from youth to older folk. As we all know, this game is played at all ages. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with looking at a different term. But the point is that building is going to be there for 40 years, easily, because it's a structure that's not just being built out of a post and barn type frame wooden building. No, it's a solid steel structure. So whether it's pickleball in there or whether it's industrial manufacturing or whatever it ends up being, that building is maximizing that lot from what I can see.
Well, we will share as a commission our thoughts with the real estate director, Mr. Smith, and with Executive Director Fix, and we'll get back to you.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
it'll be on the agenda for the next time. The motion was to table this, go to executive session. You in favor?
I am.
Yes.
Yes.
So if I can just add, so for executive sessions, under 423110 subsection 1 sub C, the commission can go into executive session to consider the minimum price at which real estate will be offered for sale or lease when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause a likelihood of decreased price. So all of these factors are things that can be discussed in executive session in the context of price. So I just want to be clear about what the scope of that discussion is.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and Elliot, I think I'd like to just sit down with some mapping and look at which properties are wet and developable around this parcel, so I have a better understanding. So let's get a meeting to sit down with a map and go through these. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to pull you through here, but give us some time to work through it. Thanks. It's a big deal. Bart, you're up next with a presentation on the retired Washington State Ferry. And you're not.
Yeah, let me
I
just go
kind of
ahead.
thought you'd be there.
Yeah, come on up. I'm just going to introduce Bart. So, Commission, we're not looking for any action or decision on this item. It's more informational. I know we all receive questions on what the Washington State Ferry is there. So, Mr. Limata will explain, just to remind you, this is the ferry that is currently tied to the old GP Wharf, and that is supported by a berth application from Colony Wharf with the Port of Bellingham. So Mr. Limata is going to give you a little rundown on his plans.
First off, I would like to thank the port and all the constituencies that went into allowing me to be here to kind of explain what the ferry boat is and what hopefully can become with it. So thank you for that. My name is Bart LaMotta. I am from the Portland area, and about 3 years ago, probably close to the date, the Washington State Ferry boat, the Evergreen, came up for public auction down in Olympia. The prior person that owned this vessel, he was from Florida, and he had intentions to take it down and use it in the Bahamas for a ferry boat / party vessel. And being from Florida, he couldn't make it happen, and too many nuances. And so, longer story short, he abandoned the vessel at Olympia, and then at which time it was seized by the federal government and then put up for auction, at which point I ended up purchasing the vessel at public auction. So the vessel, to me, I picked it up for $290,000. The replacement value of the vessel, as two vessel surveys, professional surveys have been done, and it would be a $67 million replacement cost to build this vessel again to such standards as it is right now. And I have those vessel surveys, which I presented to the insurance company. In fact, earlier, as you were speaking of Lloyd's of London, currently I have Lloyd's of London do the insurance on the vessel, and which ends up protecting all the aspects of everything that the port needs, and environmental and everything that way. So just a real basic about me, just it's myself, my wife. I have 3 daughters, and my degree is in aviation business administration. I grew up in a family that was, back in 1957, my father started a helicopter logging company with just one small little helicopter back, which he got right after World War II, and then that ended up becoming a company, Columbia Helicopters. They use the tandem rotor Chinook helicopters to do heavy lift helicopter operations, mainly helicopter logging and heavy lift operations, which became a worldwide operation. That company then ended up supporting up to 1,000 people at one point. So my dad passed away some years ago. My mother became the primary shareholder, at which point she had it for a short time, and we decided to sell the company, and that worked out well. So I took those proceeds from that and invested then very timely into Tesla and went really deep on that. At such point, then I became really even more so interested in this idea of sustainability, of all those things that we look forward in our future, the environmental sustainability, the job sustainability, the cultural sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier, having my younger children and an older daughter as well, I look forward to having the best of all things for my children. And two, as I kind of look into the things, I see a lot of corporations talking about, green stamp on this and, this changing. And so with Tesla, I ended up doing solar on the roof and electric cars and, you know, kind of going down that route. And I found that it's a very good thing for myself and my family. But as I look onto it, and I look here a couple summers ago where the temperature reached, I think it was 114 degrees around the middle part of Washington State, and just different things, I've become more and more concerned about the change in temperature and just the whole aspects of climate change and whatnot there. So with that being said, it kind of, back to the vessel itself, it was built in 1954. This was the first ferry boat that was built of this size, and so it has very much historical significance to the community. And I was kind of thinking, if I were walking through the airport, say if I was from Chicago and flew into Seattle, if there were two things that would speak to me of what the Puget Sound area and Seattle is, there's two things that I would see at a gift shop, probably on the way out. One would be the Space Needle, and another one would probably be one of the Washington State ferries, just a little model or something. So very iconic, and also kind of cultural in that way. So anyway, back to this vessel in particular. It has two main diesel engines that provide the main energy source, or the main drive to two electric generators. And those two electric generators then get spread out to 4 DC electric drives, 2 on each end. And of those electric drives, you've got 2 electric drives on one end that shaft into a single propeller, and then 2 electric drives on the other end being a ferry boat. Anyway, so these electric drives in turn can be powered by batteries. So in my studies and looking at this, and also in talking with the chief engineer that I have aboard, he's worked with this vessel as chief engineer for a total of 9 years, and he's been with Washington State Ferries for a total of 19 years, so he knows this vessel top to bottom. I've seen the propellers turning on this boat, and it's very much a usable vessel. In fact, it was pulled out of retirement and put into short-term use, and then put back into retirement, and then sold at auction. And so it's short of all the regulatory items to make it work. It's usable, I guess I should say. So back to this idea of the sustainability. I'm looking for sustainability of all things, sustainability of jobs, the environment, economic, ecological, and you know, what it will take to have things for not only what we have here as our local areas, but also sustainability of if global warming kind of goes the way things are projected, you have whole areas like Bangladesh that will just be flooded, and you know, these people have no choice as to what happens to them. So I don't know, I feel a certain amount of trying to reach a karmic balance in my life, and just doing the right thing. And so with that being said, the question is, how do you get the batteries on board? I'm looking at probably a couple shipping containers full of batteries that would go where the cars go, and then those would be then wired into the electric drives. These batteries, I see them being charged from renewable energy, solar, wind, hydro. The thing too that the vessel would be able to have, if you had, say, the vessel floating, think of it like the center of a lily pad, and then have solar panels around the vessel that would charge the vessel up when it's sitting in port. But then if the vessel is to travel, you would pull the rafts of solar panels back on board the boat and then flat pack them and then travel on from there. And so
If I can
would this
just-
go into operation back into the ferry service, or what's the intended operation?
yeah, so there's really what I'm looking at is I think what I'm searching for is the highest and best use out of it. And so I think ultimately what the highest and best use, well, there's so many different things. And sorry, I'm probably going over on time. So looking, I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, well,
Please.
Commission, if I can just kind of explain what we're looking for is kind of Mr. Limata to share his kind of vision with you. From an operations standpoint, the current situation is we have an approved berth app for where the vessel is currently moored that goes through the end of November. And so we're just looking for a little bit of discussion on the appetite for how long that vessel may potentially sit there. We can approve a berth app at our discretion, at the port's discretion. And so kind of looking to make sure that we're understanding what our appetite is for how long the vessel sits on that dock.
How long do you need?
Yeah, I haven't got to the meat and potatoes as to how this can economically benefit the
there?
community yet.
We want
And
to
so-
know, we want to know things like how long are you going to be there? Because we're looking to extend the berth app.
Sure.
So what's the time frame? That's really the relevant
Okay.
point.
So, yeah, a couple points as to,
Can you answer that question first?
Oh.
How long do you need to be berthed at our dock to make all of this vision come to fruition?
part of that is dependent on, there's certain variables.
Give me a range.
I'd say from 1 year to 5 years.
And could you remind us why it's at the current facility? Because it started over in Fairhaven. Did it move because of construction? And can it go back to Fairhaven, or is it in its best possible location where it is?
We required it to be moved because we needed to do some work on that pier. We also wanted that pier to be a working pier, not a lay berth pier, and that tenant is not allowed to have lay berth operations, so this was not a legitimate use under that tenant's lease. So that's one of the reasons it moved over to the GP pier where we do allow lay berthing.
In the
Could it be
GP,
worked on the GP pier, or is it, is it not a setup for like a work pier?
It's currently not set up as a work pier.
so it would move from there when to be worked on?
Well, okay, so from the other side of the waterway, what we could do is have a barge that would be loaded with
You're talking about the Colony Wharf side now.
Colony Wharf side. That is
You
correct,
would move it
yes.
from there to Colony Wharf. When would that happen?
That would happen within the next, well, inside this 1 to 5 year.
It could be as little as 1, but as many as 5.
That is correct.
I think we're talking about the barge terminal here. So we'd be tying a ferry up that's lay berthing to our barge terminal, which would preclude doing barging activities.
Not on the Colony.
And cargo is the preferred use.
It's currently unusable for cargo, though, given its standard, though. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
It's not,
Were you going, your
Oh,
intent,
I'm sorry.
was your intent to load a barge at Colony Wharf and move it over to where your ferry is?
So yes, if we are like moving equipment on board the vessel, we could use, load larger pieces at Colony Wharf and then across the way.
And that's currently our dock, correct? Being operated by,
Yeah, it's, the port owns the GP pier, Colony Wharf operates it for us.
what revenue are we getting from that?
We take 20% of any of their revenue.
So Colony is leasing it on our behalf, and we're getting 20%.
That's correct.
I'm paying Colony Wharf $72,000 a year for that location.
You're paying them 70, and our take on that is
15.
15.
Yes, sir.
Can we talk about that? Please?
So you're gonna need 1 to 5, you're gonna need 1 to 5 years. And the final result of the project would be what?
I will say potentially 1 to 5 years. Now, there's other locations that I could move the vessel to. However, there's other things that I'm looking at doing on another project that I'm and like to employ some personnel down in Colony Wharf for another boat that I'm working on, a smaller vessel. Also, just the, I guess what I'm saying is that's a decent lease rate, $6,000 a month for a vessel this size. And being as it can either be sustainable at this level, or if I need to jump it up, I would, be able to pay higher rent if I was able to load things on board or drive things onto the vessel or have crane service to support the vessel. Or, but right now, for what I'm looking for, I mean, it's just kind of a temporary storage, I guess.
Commissioner, I think what we can do is, if it works for you, we can go ahead and approve another month of labor thing and continue to give you, and we can go month to month and continue to give you updates on progress.
I've got, first of all, the fact that you're not working on this exclusively gives me some heartburn. It means we're more likely to find the 5-year window than the 1-year window. This is a kind of a event that needs focus.
Okay.
Extreme focus.
Yes, sir.
And for us to be tying up that dock without that kind of focus gives me great heartburn.
Would it help if I, say, paid a year in advance or anything to that effect?
We're tying up a dock.
Okay.
And I think we need to discuss the ramifications of that. Plus, I would really like to talk about the revenue sharing on a dock that we're maintaining, repairing.
There's no,
And doing nothing but letting someone else take 80% of that money when we're really the ones responsible.
Commissioners, we have been in talks with Colony Wharf about their existing lease. This is being a part of that, and also the barge terminal. So yeah, we're going to be having those discussions in the near future as we report back to you on our discussions with Colony Wharf.
I think we should have that part of the discussion, not now, about the
Oh,
raises.
I agree.
Yeah, so,
But I also think that a month isn't unreasonable, but I do think that we need to make a decision on whether or not this is something we want long-term when we have that discussion.
These ferries have a tendency to stick around and not go away. They're all over Puget Sound. They're ferries that are no longer in use. They get sold off for a couple $100,000. People have a dream, whether they're great dreams or not. I'm not going to comment on that, but they tend to not happen, and then the vessels stick around.
Okay.
And
so I have a question for you, Bart.
yes, sir.
You live in Oregon, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
In the Portland area?
Yes, sir.
And so you're going to be commuting up here to work on it all the time?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I know Tongue Point has a big pier, and they have a lot of area to work there. Why wouldn't you want it closer to where you live? I'm just asking.
Yeah, so you'd be surprised how challenging it is to find berth or piers or locations for a vessel this size, and at sustainable rates. the thing that I'm looking at is, you know, of course, the better the lease rate, the better it is for me.
Right.
But if I was to find a peer that, you know, could really go to town on it and work on it at the next level up, this is not the location for that. I cannot get a crane to this location. I
Right.
cannot get drive a car to this next to it. This is think of it more as,
Well, that's why I asked about Tongue Point. You could do all that there. I've been there. I
Yeah.
know what goes on there.
sure, and I'd love to touch base with them and see if they could. Yeah, I'd be happy to move it there if they provided
Okay, I was
something.
just curious.
But yeah, no, so you know, I'm well financed. I've got to say, I'm paying, you know, the full insurance on it. I just made the payment of $139,000 here within the last month to
And
make
that's
sure
not-
that it's up to standards. And you know, I do not want anything to happen negative to the boat or to the Port of Bellingham or the, you know.
Sure. And I don't think our question is about your capacity to pay for the moorage. We're just wanting to make sure that we're not losing out on keeping that as an active part of our facilities for bringing in commerce, bringing in cargo, and bringing in job creation opportunities.
Sure.
That's what we're trying to weigh here. Not necessarily that whether the merits of the project.
Yeah.
I personally think it looks great there. It's so iconic,
Me
and
too.
I love seeing
Yeah.
it. It looks really, you know, it's one of those old iconic boats that people love to see.
Yeah.
But does that mean it should be taking up valuable pier space? Is part, you know, the rest of the story that we need to have a little bit more conversation. So.
Sure.
And we recently watched the Hannah get built in a period of less than 2 years.
Yeah.
In front to back.
Yeah.
And there was a ton of activity, a ton of jobs, which is what we're concerned about. We
Sure.
want to make sure we're employing people, we're keeping things moving. From the sounds of things, this is not going to be that for some period of time.
Yeah.
I personally am okay with a 1-month extension. I would encourage you to find another place. This is just this commissioner speaking. But 1 month is not unreasonable to give you that kind of time. That would be my recommendation. I'll defer to the other commissioners.
May I ask, is there a long-term plan for that GP site? If I were to move out and then, you know, at a later date, be able to come back, is that something that could be entertained? Or is there some method whereby we could, I could help the port to, you know, in the transition into the renewable energy economy, you know, how could I help the Port Commission and or Bellingham into the next phase? And
Tiffany,
yeah.
are we on currently a set number of months term, or could we just move to a month to month, which
Yeah,
would
we
give us
could-
some more flexibility? I know month to month isn't necessarily the best for every tenant, but some use of that terminal is better than no use, in my opinion, and some revenue coming in is better than no revenue coming in for that.
Sure.
But we want to make sure that we're also keeping our options open for other high impact projects.
Sure. Like I mentioned, we can go to a month to month and stay in contact with Mr. Lumata and Colony Wharf and see how their plans are progressing, and also be coordinating internally with Whatcom Waterway cleanup activities, because that pier is an integral part of that project as well.
Yeah, I know there's some longer range projects for that pier in terms of opportunities to redevelop it into public use and access
Exactly.
there. It's not always going to be doing what it's doing today.
Yeah, and to Rob's point about the many ferries around Puget Sound, we are obviously trying to get ahead of this a little bit, because we have seen this happen at other ports where it becomes, so starting the discussion I think is really important. But for now, what I'm hearing is we'll go to month berth apps.
darn that Kalakala
And bring it back to us next month. I just want to make sure that we're involved in that decision. I want to see progress on something, or a plan. I want to see what the plan is, and
Yeah.
1 to 5 is not a plan.
Sure.
1 to 5 is a hope,
Sure, yeah.
right? What is a plan? What is the budget? What does it
Yeah.
look like?
Commission, we'll come back, we'll approve it through the end of the year, and then come back in January, February with an update.
I can live with that.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Nice to
thank
meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do we have any other items, or are we done? Oh, stormwater. Can we take 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah. We will break now, and we will come back at 5:35.
All this talk of stormwater is getting really
for November 19th, 2024, with our stormwater program update.
All right, thank you. My name is Elise Cords, environmental specialist for the port. And we have been very hyper-focused for the last few years on certain locations and certain concerns in regards to stormwater. But the intent of this presentation is just to take a few steps back and do a general overview of the port's stormwater efforts. So basics, stormwater, what is it and why do we care? So stormwater comes about as precipitation in the form of rain or snow, and when it flows and contacts structures and surfaces, it can pick up pollutants, man-made structures, of course, and the built world. Generally speaking, it flows untreated to the waters of the state. And the metric that stands out in my mind is that it's recognized as the single largest source of pollutants to Puget Sound, and that's a really important thing to know about, and I believe it. Contaminated stormwater can result in degraded water quality. Impacts of that could be things such as algal blooms, shellfish harvest restrictions, or impacts to endangered species habitat. High stormwater flows cause habitat destruction, flooding, and property damage. And the net result of all this is widespread economic and recreational impacts. Stormwater considerations touch many port projects and programs. Stormwater is regulated federally under the Clean Water Act of 1972. They created a system of permits called National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits, and that's NPDES for short. The program of these permits addresses water pollution by regulating point sources that discharge pollutants to the waters of the United States. Implementation in our state is delegated to the Department of Ecology, and they perform permitting, administrative, and enforcement aspects of the program. These permits cover certain municipal, industrial, and construction activities.
Is there any federal oversight on that anymore? Is it all delegated to the state? Do you know?
There is federal oversight. There are certain permits that are just EPA permits, and also in my next slide, or this slide I have up now, even though enforcement is most often by ecology, it can also be enforced by the EPA.
So it is, and it is EPA that has the jurisdiction?
Yeah, originally that's where the permits came from, but most of the time in our state it's the Department of Ecology, yeah. So we just covered that first topic there. Clean Water Act allows for penalties of up to $66,712,000 per day per violation.
I have a question on that. Do we know where that money goes?
I believe that a lot of it goes to the regulatory programs themselves, perhaps, and in some instances it goes to environmental organizations for improvements and various stormwater improvements.
I'd like to think when they're finding people at that rate that it's going to be used for something to do good instead of administrative costs.
If it's a administrative penalty, so not, I don't want to jump ahead, but that fourth bullet, if it's not a third-party citizen suit, if it's instead a regulatory suit, whatever the penalty is goes into the U.S. Treasury. So it doesn't necessarily go to any particular project.
The slush fund.
But it's a federal permit, and so it's federal law that it would be enforced under.
Yeah, so Holly just mentioned there are third-party lawsuits that are allowed under this regulation, the Clean Water Act. And third parties are actively exercising this right in our region currently, with ports being the subject of some of these citizen lawsuits. Local jurisdictions, which are permittees, such as the City of Bellingham and Whatcom County, can also enforce their own stormwater codes. They have stormwater code. That's their own. So the Port of Bellingham holds several of these NPDES permits. We have the Western Washington Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit. We have 2 industrial stormwater general permits. The first is at the airport. and the second is at the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. We hold 2 individual waste discharge permits. That's the, one is for the Aerated Stabilization Basin, the ASB, and the other is for the closed airport wood waste landfill. And those individual permits are tailored permits, unique to those facilities. They require significant effort to obtain and to renew. And then we also obtain construction stormwater permits as needed and generally transfer those to the contractor to build the project. So we'll go through some of these permits in detail. The Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit applies to owners and operators of small municipal separate storm sewer systems, or in the industry it's called an MS4 for short. That permit authorizes the port to discharge stormwater to the waters of the state under the conditions of the permit. The port is a secondary permittee under this permit, and the city of Bellingham and the county and Ferndale, other smaller cities, Linden, are primary permittees. Other entities that fall into the secondary permittee category are universities, colleges, special purpose districts, and correctional institutions, and ports fall under that as well. This permit requires us to have a stormwater management program, and ours covers the 6 elements that are required. It resides on our website, and it is updated annually. The new permit has just become effective August 1st of this year, and there are a few key updates that, that affect our program and our what we do. So nothing insurmountable, but there are a few changes that we foresee with this permit. It's a 5-year permit cycle, so this is the first year of that 5-year cycle. So these 2 images show you our Phase 2 permit coverage area, but you'll notice that Blaine is not shown. So it's the parts highlighted in yellow. Those are our Phase 2 municipal stormwater permit coverage. You'll notice that the airport, in the main area where the airport is active, that is under the industrial permit. So we've blanked that out, but all areas around the industrial permit are regulated under the municipal stormwater permit. We have 1,770 acres under permit coverage under this permit. And when we first obtained permit coverage, we decided that it would be a port-wide program, that we wanted to have Blaine have the same requirements and just apply the permit everywhere around the port so as not to cause confusion for people and so as not to cause unfair advantage for the areas that are not regulated. So our approach on this permit is that we are getting all sorts of team involvement. We don't have a stormwater division, a dedicated stormwater division, so I ask for lots and lots of assistance from everyone around the port. There's really only a couple of divisions that don't have major involvement with this permit. We do internal and external environmental compliance assessment visits. So we do the ECAP visits on our own groups, our own operating divisions, as well as the tenant businesses. And that ECAP evaluation always includes a stormwater evaluation. We have employee trainings that are conducted as a requirement of this permit. They are training about the permit itself, spill prevention and response training, and operation and maintenance training. We do public education and outreach. We've got numerous entities here at the port that are doing that, and I don't even have to prompt them half the time. It's great. But we do that education and outreach through many different avenues: social media, newsletters, signage, publications, public speaking, just active engagement with our tenants, the ECAP program, all of those things. This permit requires us to coordinate with the local jurisdictions, Whatcom County and the City of Bellingham, and we do that on maintenance issues. Sometimes we can also collaborate with them on outreach to the public, and we also collaborate with them on illicit discharge issues. The permit requires an operation and maintenance plan, which includes pollution prevention and good housekeeping procedures for activities that are under our functional control. And under that element of the operation and maintenance plan, that's where the requirement to annually inspect and maintain our stormwater system resides. We have an illicit discharge commission resolution. I've got a slide coming up on that next. And there's also an illicit discharge program element. And then we also are required to do construction and post-construction stormwater management for our builds, and the tenants are also required to do that. And that's for development and redevelopment activities. So the illicit discharge resolution was first enacted in 2008, right around the time of our permit coverage. And so you can look it up, it's 1257. It prohibits illicit discharges and illicit connections to the port's storm sewer system. And if you're wondering what an illicit discharge is, it sounds kind of exciting. In general, it's any discharge to the storm sewer system that's not composed entirely of stormwater. So a cup of coffee might qualify. But we don't take it quite that far. So the illicit discharge program element requires us to map our stormwater utilities, which we do in GIS. It requires us to inspect 1/3 of our outfalls annually for illicit discharges. If we suspect illicit discharges, we do source tracing to try to determine where the issue is coming from, and we need to try to eliminate that discharge or find that illicit connection. That would be something like if a sanitary sewer was accidentally connected to the storm sewer, or maybe not so accidentally. Spill reporting and response plan is also part of this element, and training goes along in this element as well. So now I'm going to shift gears and talk to you about the industrial stormwater permits that we have. This slide shows the coverage area for both of those locations. The airport on the left, at 188 acres under permit coverage, and the shipping terminal on the right with 14.4 acres under coverage. The airport has had their permit since 2006 and the shipping terminal since 2017. This permit regulates stormwater discharges from covered industrial activities. So at the airport, the activities that triggered our permit coverage are airport de-icing and anti-icing. And at the shipping terminal, it was marine cargo handling that requires us to get this permit. Both of our industrial stormwater general permit sites have numerous entities, tenant entities, operating within the permit boundaries. And the permit covers activities, our own port activities, as well as tenant activities on the site. And as the permittee, though, the port has the overall responsibility for the actions and pollution generated within the permit footprint. This is a 5-year permit cycle as well. The current permit that we're operating under is effective only until the end of this year. The draft permit has come out. The Washington Public Ports Association made comments to Ecology about this draft permit, and so did the Port of Bellingham. There are some significant changes. The new final permit will be out any day now, so please stay tuned. One thing that is interesting in the draft permit is, or several things, PFAS, the per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, is going to be required to be sampled at the airport. And in the future, the tire wear product 6-PPDQ is going to be required at the shipping terminal. So that'll be, I think, in the 3rd year of permit coverage. And there are other significant changes we anticipate, but until the final permit comes out, I'd rather not, speculate.
Is that testing done at the perimeter?
It's done at the stormwater outfalls.
At the outfalls?
Mm-hmm. And there's only 2 at the airport.
So that would typically be a runoff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's testing of stormwater, not of groundwater or anything like that, yeah. But there could be some commingling of that, perhaps.
So we don't currently test for any substances associated with that firefighting foam, which would be those PFAS?
Correct. We test at the airport for the 5 standard parameters that are required under this general permit. So they're very general and fairly limited, really. So our ISGP, or Industrial Stormwater General Permit approach, is that we have stormwater pollution prevention plans for both locations, and that is really a roadmap to stormwater protection. It is a living document, and it needs to change when conditions on the site change. We employ best management practices, and those are defined best management practices. We implement those and we evaluate them to make sure that they are effective. We have a pollution prevention team at each location. Those are the folks that are actively engaged in stormwater compliance activities at each site. We do employee and tenant trainings annually and as needed. If they need a tune-up mid-year, we give them a tune-up based on performance. We have consultant support for this permit because it requires a lot of knowledge given the legal liabilities and the intricacies and the complications. It's a tricky permit. And I really appreciate my consultant support. Monthly inspections are conducted. In those, we look at the whole site, the best management practices, the outfalls, the activities that are going on, equipment that's on site and whether it's leaking or having any maintenance issues, and we're looking for illicit discharges. We conduct quarterly sampling. At the airport, that's 5 different parameters, and at the shipping terminal, that's 8 different parameters. And then we conduct all the required record keeping, make sure our employees have stormwater awareness at the top of their mind at all the time. And another helpful thing is the ECAP visits, again, Environmental Compliance Assessment Program. During those visits, if stormwater issues are discovered, it gives us a chance to discuss those and resolve them. And then Ecology also has weighed in and said that they would support us if we needed them to support when there were an issue with a tenant, perhaps, or something like that. So to hone in on the corrective action at the shipping terminal, and just to step back a second, corrective actions are permit-required responses to benchmark exceedances. And they come in 3 flavors: level 1, level 2, and level 3. So a level 1 occurs when you exceed an applicable benchmark during 1 quarter in a calendar year. Level 2 happens when you exceed that same parameter for a 2nd quarter, and level 3 is if you exceed that same parameter for a 3rd quarter. And the level 1s are operational source controls, so those are, generally speaking, less expensive operational changes that you can do to improve the stormwater quality, such as or doing additional sweeping or doing additional training. Level 2 is a structural source control, and that means keeping the stormwater separate from the pollutants by either covering the activity, putting it indoors, making a barrier between a pollutant source and the stormwater. And level 3, which is generally the most expensive corrective action, is treatment best management practices that need to be installed. So the Bellingham Shipping Terminal reached a level 3 in 2023 for turbidity, copper, zinc, and total suspended solids. Each of those parameters had exceedances during 3 or more quarters. They were triggered at 5 out of our 6 monitoring locations. So the engineering report, Ecology did approve our engineering report in August of 2024, and that report describes the treatment that we are adding at the locations where the level 3 is required. One component of our level 3 was the cessation of scrap metal cargo activities. We are fortunate to have a construction project that was already in the pipeline to address stormwater, and it was approved as a significant component of our level 3. And this is a cost savings, and it's also expediting the level 3 completion. Typical level 3 corrective action costs can range in the millions of dollars. So we're very fortunate to have the MARAD project ongoing and currently underway, and to be approved as part of our level 3. Marine Terminals is tracking the completion dates and the components of the level 3. There's large team involvement with routine check-ins. The team consists of folks from engineering, environmental, marine terminals, and maintenance. And as far as the level 3, you might wonder, well, how long does that have to go on for? And basically, once you have your level 3 set, you have to continue those activities into the future. If you do think you need to make a change, that you have to negotiate that with ecology. It's basically, once it's set, it's set. So
does that mean we need to keep the remediation solutions in place, which for perpetuity essentially?
Yes.
Which is what we were already planning to do because we're building a brand new stormwater treatment facility.
Right.
And we're not planning to remove it.
Right.
So we're going to be in compliance with this MARAD-based project as planned.
Yes, but there are lesser elements of the level 3 which would be really easy to forget about. Say you had staff turnover and somebody didn't tell somebody they needed to do this, like adding small treatment wattles that contain biochar. That's an element of our level 3. And so if all of those things need to continue into perpetuity.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
and in addition, weekly sweeping, which is another part of our level 3. So this graph you probably are familiar with. It's been in your packets, and it depicts, it's actually just one of the graphs from one of the monitoring locations at the shipping terminal, and it's at one of the hardest or the most impacted locations, so that's why I chose it. But it does show that our numbers are trending down. The red lines are the benchmark requirements under the permit, and so you want to be below those red lines. And you can see that in general we're trending downwards, and we had a very good Q4 result with no exceedances. So it's something we can be proud of. So as far as tenants go, I didn't check today to see if these numbers are correct, and I know that certain businesses are in the process of obtaining permits, but this gives you a general idea of what some of our tenants are doing and how many we have in the various categories. So boatyards, we've got 5 tenant entities, the industrial stormwater permit, 5. And then the conditional no exposure certificate, that's when there's a checklist that you go through, and if you can answer the checklist and determine that your business has no impacts or exposure to stormwater, then you get what's called a conditional no exposure certificate, and 3 of our tenants have those. So as far as current efforts, the waterfront stormwater redevelopment project, that's in the works. It's planning for the transition when the ASB is no longer being used to detain stormwater. And it's going to be a very important thing, and there'll be a lot of different improvements that come with that because it covers a pretty significant area. The BST project, stormwater improvements, we just discussed that, and wanted to mention that the improvements that we're putting in currently there are also sized for potential expansion. So depending on how we take the shipping terminal, where, what areas are going to be utilized and whether the whole thing will remain, at least the stormwater treatment that's going in is sized for potential expansion if that's desired. And then the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park, there's a project that just finished up there, and planning is underway for future improvements at that location. And then as far as drivers of improvement for the stormwater program, grant funding for equipment and technology purchases, would be a driver of improvement for us. A sweeper would be great, and a grant would be a really great way to get another sweeper. The Green Marine Program has continuous improvement, and there are performance indicators for stormwater. So I know that Adrian has lots of plans for stormwater improvement that I need to start implementing. Permit changes are a big driver for us, and they are trending more stringently in general. And then I think someone mentioned it in the budget discussion that there's some a software upgrade. So software and new technology or time management and accounting software could help us track the cost of stormwater permit required activities separately from other work performed, which would provide a detailed analysis of baseline stormwater program expenditures, staffing allocations, and it would aid us in identifying staffing needs, assigning divisions and roles and responsibilities, and assessing the need for internalizing and externalizing program activities, you know, giving us a real knowledge of what the stormwater program costs us, because right now that analysis is very difficult to come up with. So, yeah, I think we're winding down here, folks. Do you have any questions for me?
Commissioner Briscoe?
I have one. In your presentation, you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, that the cities can enforce their own level of above the EPA's levels. They can enforce further levels.
Yeah, they develop their own stormwater code. And so, for example, the city of Bellingham, in their stormwater code, it says that you cannot discharge potable water to a storm drain. So that's you taking tap water and pouring it down the storm drain, and that's not allowed in the city of Bellingham. So, yeah. So
really, the cities are unchecked to put codes in above and beyond what the federal government says we have to do. Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe so.
Thank you.
Mr. Shepherd?
Thorough presentation, thank you. It's lots of good work, it's important work, and it's something that we take a lot of care and attention to, so I appreciate that. You mentioned the rubber in the tires. Are we seeing any, this chemical seems to be in all of the tires that are manufactured, from commercial vehicles to general vehicles as well. I assume when we start testing for this, we're going to be finding this substance and having to report it. But I guess we can do sweeping, we can do other kind of collection monitoring and having stormwater kind of filtering processes. But are we seeing any regulatory compliance that's going to address the source of that chemical in tires and phase it out? Have you seen anything
I think
on that,
yeah,
that nature happening? Because we're just going to be finding this thing and recognizing it's a problem.
Yeah, there's a major work group working on this, and of course it's not an issue just in our state, it's an issue all across the country and the world, frankly, and it's the biggest news in stormwater ever, really, because it has such large implications. And again, that chemical in tires is designed to protect the tires from the ozone. And so if they were to come up with a different thing that did the same thing, who knows if it would have a similar toxicity. It's particularly toxic to coho salmon when they return to spawn. So they're being killed outright, right when they get exposed to it, to the stormwater in the streams. So I do believe that it's a major area of research right now. And our state is leading the way in that research. As a matter of fact, I think I heard that issue was somewhat discovered here in Bellingham, or at least it was one of the early places where the knowledge came to be. So some program here in Bellingham had something to do with it.
Okay. It has the coho, it makes them sterile. When they go up and spawn, it does something to the eggs, and it makes it sterile so they can't reproduce.
Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of puzzle to solve of what this thing was, impacting the fish. They kept looking for what chemical, and they finally found it in this particular
The
obscure
interesting
thing in
thing
the tire.
so far is this coho is the only species that's affected. Yeah, it's not widespread across all the species.
Yeah.
For some reason, the coho is the one it affects. So it's really weird how that plays out.
I can say something positive, though, that some of the treatment systems we have on the shipping terminal, at least, they're media filter drains, and that is the type of treatment system that can reduce the levels of 6 ppdq in stormwater. So we're already, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding, but I think we're set up pretty well to address that issue.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation.
Just curious about the city's permit. They obviously have a much larger permit. Does it encompass the Cornwall landfill and the area to the south of where we are?
Yes. Yeah, they're municipal stormwater permittee as well, and they're a primary permittee, so it's the entire city of Bellingham.
Yeah, very thorough presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, that concludes the business part of our meeting. We now open this up for any public comment. Anybody online or anybody in the audience wishing to speak to the commission, you may now for a 3-minute period. Anybody online wishing to speak, just make yourself known. Seeing no one. Anybody in the audience? Okay, we'll move to other business. Mr. Shepherd, you want to kick us off?
I don't have anything for the day. Thanks.
Has that ever happened?
Today,
You can thank me later.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I have no other business.
Oh, then it's all on me.
That's it. It's all you, big fella. Go ahead and let her rip.
I just, a couple of things, small cities meeting this morning. I just wanted to do a small report on a couple of things impacting the mayors in the small cities. Clearly, the impact of flooding is going to have an impact, and the amount of work being done to mitigate that is not up to par. So if we have another major event, we're going to see substantial flooding. They do have a lot more equipment. They do have a lot more staged equipment. Emergency preparedness is high, but the water mitigation has not happened, and so they're expecting, in the event of another major storm, we're going to have some impacts up north, just to give you that. The other one is we do have on the county council agenda tonight an ordinance on heavy industrial areas, impact zones that was discussed today a little bit, but really just know that the county council is going to be taking some action on heavy industrial ground. And I think I'd like to see what happens from that. Just keep me posted, Tyler, if you know what's going to happen.
So what happened to the big discussion group that was supposed to go on before that happened?
That's my next topic. So the next one is, we were going to have a couple of meetings, Rob, with us and some city people and others to talk about not only in heavy industrial, but also some waterfront. And where are we with that, and when can we schedule that?
I'm not sure. The meetings with the heavy industrial group I'm familiar with, but regarding the waterfront.
But we're also going to do some community outreach and have some meetings with the mayors and the small cities and the neighborhood associations and I called it a charrette and was heavily chastised for that.
Remember that one?
I do remember that
So
one,
just to, not to bring back a bad memory, but some of us are still waking up at 3 in the morning with
Right.
the word charrette.
Well, I think after that, we talked about doing that in the first quarter of the year, trying to get those going in the first.
Make sure it's
Yep.
on track.
It's on track, yeah. That's
everybody
separate
know.
from the heavy industrial discussions, which Tyler and I had several of. I think the Business and Commerce Committee had discussions on this, and we had a lot of other groups engage, both the Planning Commission and the County Council, so we definitely were heard. They know what our desires were. I think there was somewhat of a compromise reached. I'm not sure that we're going to be happy with the compromise. It does have some restrictions. I think,
Can you tell us what that is?
top of my head, I think it was regarding battery energy storage was one of them, and we wanted no restrictions on that because we do believe that with the demands on the energy grid, on the electrical grid, that we're going to need battery energy storage at some of our facilities. That's what we're trying to do down at the shipping terminal. And then the other one was regarding bulk offloading and loading of bulk products, transfer of bulk products from one vehicle or transportation type to another, and that's going to be restricted in those areas as well. And those were the two things we didn't like about the compromise that was reached.
So what are the restrictions on bulk material?
You won't be allowed to offload and reload onto, different forms of transportation. In other words, you couldn't be able to take a bunch of scrap metal off of a train car and put it on a truck or vice versa.
On any of the HII areas?
No, I believe it's just this one that we're talking about.
Yeah, Tyler Schroeder, Director of Economic Development. It is just the Bellingham Urban Growth Area, HII. And I think some of the compromise language was covered. So you could do bulk commodity transfer and distribution if it was in a covered facility. So it will still have some impact, but it did move the needle a little bit.
All commodities, or?
Where we had some discussion in the group was to actually have the council identify specific commodities that they did not want to have in that location. And we didn't quite get to that point. Although, let's see what happens tonight at council. I know a couple council members were still looking into some language and maybe proposing some edits to the language. So I'll make sure to report back to commission in December and give an update.
And just to be clear, this is for HII in UGA areas.
Yes.
And there's very little property involved in that. There's only a couple of HII. Yeah. Yeah, and so the other one was just making sure we have something planned for outreach in the first quarter of the year with the rest of those. I'd like to get that on the calendar February if possible. Is that too soon? Then a lesson learned, just the homeless encampment out by Walmart. The city is in the process of removing that. And the lesson learned there is that there is 2,000 tons of garbage being removed from that site. You put that into dollar figures at roughly $100 a ton just for the disposal. You're at $200,000 without the transportation and without the collection and without the labor. So the homeless encampment out by Walmart is going to run close to $500,000 by the time they're done, is my estimate. That's Ken Bell just doing the numbers on the back of a napkin. Tremendous impact. And a lesson for early intervention when homeless encampments begin to develop. The homeless shelter currently has room for 50 to 60 more residents, low barrier. What Hans has said about their capacity is that their biggest problem is they don't have employees to handle a lot of what they're being faced with. But they do have new capacity and can take that. Unfortunately, the demand is so much larger that and a number of the people who are in those encampments aren't going to set foot across the door of the shelter. So,
Those homes in operation now?
yeah, they're fully occupied. They're completely out of base camp.
Oh, wow.
But the city is still looking for an interim facility. There are still a need. Particularly for the higher impact. So the city is still looking for that. Mayor was incredibly involved in that, and today she was actually physically on site at the removal at the Walmart facility. And then just wanted to also publicize that we are going to be looking at, and Holly, with your permission, calling this a hearing on the 3 to 5 commissioners in the December meeting. We're going to put that on the agenda just to have public testimony, call it a hearing so that we get people to the microphone to say this is your chance to tell us what you think about it, pro or con, at the December meeting, and then not an action item, but put that on the agenda for later. So that's my request as well. And then I am done. Anybody? Meeting adjourned.